So I'm Helen, I'm the Head of Public Engagement at the University of Bath, and what I'm going to do today, that's my little, we're not allowed to have a logo, so that's not my logo, but that's good, you'll see that on almost all our work that we do. So it's not a logo. The Public Engagement Unit, just a little bit of context then, was set up in 2012 at the University of Bath. We were part of a national programme to sort of initiate a culture of public engagement with research across the whole of the university sector. Public engagement being opportunities for researchers to work with non-academic communities for mutual benefit. So that's kind of what my role is. I've been at the University of Bath for just over 5 years now. And what I'm going to do is we talk you through some of the learning we've had over the years. So we have a rather small budget. I say that because I know actually it's not that small in comparison to some universities and perhaps to some work that's funded, but anyway, it's a modest budget, let's put that, modest budget. And we have funded arts projects every year through our funding scheme. So really what I want to do is just run through some of the things that we've done and kind of what we've learnt along the way, because that project that we've just heard from Melissa was one of the last ones that we funded, so last year, and it was a big project for us. So that was a £10,000 project. Okay, so that's that one. So last year we funded two £10,000 projects. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about the cubicle because obviously you've just heard all about it, but we also funded this project here, which is called River is the Venue, and that was an interdisciplinary, well they were all interdisciplinary projects, they're both interdisciplinary projects actually, but this was interdisciplinary between our Department of Education and engineering faculty, and working with 44 AD, which is an art studio in Bath, and also Art at the Heart at the Royal University Hospital. So, and they put a call out for artists to get involved with some work around flooding in the region. And we ended up with 6 different art pieces, and they were all intended to be accessible. So they were street art, and they were meant to be physically accessible pieces. And we've got some of them, they're just not on display at the minute. But so that was the parallel project that was running alongside the cubicle. So quite different, but you can get a sort of feel. So I think we've got some flags which show kind of flooding height. We've got live performance going on here, which is kind of painting portraits while underwater because of rising seawater. So these are quite fun, and this is what the portraits look like at the end. Got some soil cores going on, and there was some kind of sort of participatory workshop type things, and then there was a sound installation as well, which I don't have a picture of. Okay, but this was last year. So, but what did we learn the year before that? So the year before we funded Leon as part of one of our funding programmes. So Leon, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you did?
Yes, I've been wondering how best to do this. Yes, it was more modestly funded. Now I know I can ask for more. But we really needed the money to move on a collaboration which was a nascent collaboration. Who are we? Well, I'm Leon Watts. I'm a psychologist originally, a cognitive scientist now described because it involves an understanding of intelligence, cognitive processes as they might be enacted by machines. Okay, machines can take many forms. The machines that I was interested in were robots, embodied computers in effect. I've been researching human relationships with robots for a little while, especially based on the motion of the robots, rather than any kind of internal processes, but on the understanding that the motion that one might see in a robot would be driven by the internal processes, by the cognitive architecture, the knowledge and understanding that one might imagine being possessed by some machine of the future. And what I could do, as far as motion, embodied motion was concerned, was very, very crude, because I had no training in that. So I wondered who might be able to help me, and maybe a choreographer would be such a person. So I went along quite blindly to the edge at the time, and I spoke to the person who was then the theatre and dance officer, who put me in touch with a choreographer who had begun to experiment with technologies in performance. And that was Jean Ambrose, which is a very, very dark image here. So that was sort of at the point at which we thought, maybe we could do something, but it's not just as simple as having a conversation on the phone, exchange some emails. What was really needed was serious time together to begin to map out understandings that exist in both of our worlds. So I think that's one of the first things that became clear to me as a necessary prerequisite for meaningful public engagement, It's to respect that there is another world into which one is stepping. And that is a fully worked out world, a fully realised world, which will take time to understand. And I think for that engagement to work, it also means being prepared as somebody who is entering a relationship with people outside of one's own sphere, to be able to explain and have patience, not as if to somebody who's an idiot, but to do the extra work that's required to bridge those worlds. So that's something I discovered through this work, and it absolutely wouldn't have been possible without the funding that Helen and Ed also managed to see something in what was then very nascent. Now it grew a lot, but through the collaboration we had, which was conversations, and ultimately me attending dance workshops, a retreat also in Portugal, which was a dance centre, where I met not just Jean and his creative technologists, the gentleman on the right here, on the left from your point of view, Michele Panagrossi, who was a theatrical technician and who was responsible for producing the robot. I don't know how well you can see, there's a perspex cube here. That was the form that our robot took. So I'm thinking about the time, Helen. I know you're going to help me.
I know, I'm keeping an eye.
Very good.
You've got 2 minutes.
Excellent. So as well as an understanding that there is a whole other world you're going to find, and that that's a world populated by people and ideas, that's a multi-dimensional world. There are lots of skills, talents, and understandings that belong to it as well. In my case, that was the world of dance. Okay, so I didn't know there was such a person as a creative technologist. No clue. Okay, it's come out of the actual technician. Maybe I could have guessed that, but I certainly wasn't thinking about that at the start. I learned words. I was saying to Kate earlier on, dramaturg. No idea. I mean, what is this? It was a word I encountered that speaks to a set of meanings that I had no access to and would not have had access to were it not for this collaboration. And so there's somebody called Guy Cools, a Belgian, who has worked with many choreographers, and he works internationally to help them think about the coherence of the work that they're producing, and often making fictions literature, something I had no idea about. So what does all that mean? I'm thinking about wrapping up. Is that for me, I'm not completely sure. It's another thing that I was talking about at the start. I'm not completely sure what my understanding was. Now, as I look back and I try to reconstitute the thought process I had in something out, quite how I understood what all these things would be. But I know that I didn't think there would be research in dance. I know that I had no clue about a dramaturg. I had no idea about the importance of venue booking in dance. It just didn't mean anything to me. Now it does. And it's not just a practical matter. Being able to, for those in that's what we're already, you know what it means. But for me, I didn't know that being able to get a venue to agree to host a performance, sometimes months or years in advance of being completed, was a massive deal in the world of dance, maybe in theatre too. Now I understand that, and I can factor that kind of thinking into what we think about as the next stage. Okay. So there's sets of understandings, roles that need to be understood, a whole new world to discover. And what that means is the public is not one thing. The public is not an undifferentiated mass of individuals to whom one might be speaking. Okay. And that, it seems to me, is a really important part of public engagement, is being prepared to work out what sets of people, constituents if you like, there may be, who you may encounter along the way. And that's what I'm going to say.
Thank you. Thank you. So I hope that gives you a bit of an idea of you've had two of the kind of researchers that we've worked with, and I hope that what we're at now with our kind of support that we offer to researchers and to our artistic kind of colleagues and arts practitioners is that recognition that there are these different skill sets and different expertise. And I think as a public engagement professional, it's my job to highlight those different types of expertise and bring them together and help people build those relationships. But it didn't start like that. So I thought what I might do is take you back a few years. So we started out, this is, again, apologies for the dark pictures, but it's a very early project that we funded, in fact before my time. And this one was only £1,650. So I'm trying to give you the figures so that you get a sense of kind of what we're doing here. And this was project that was funded, again, all of the projects we fund, they're proposals that come to us. So we're not going out and going, here, do you want 3,000? Do you want that? So people have to come to us and ask for money. And this was a researcher who came to us and said, and again, we might want to be careful about what we say and what gets edited to go live, but something along the lines of, I've got a mate who's an artist, can you give him some money to do some stuff together? Like, kind of, a bit like that. And we'd only just got going, and then we were keen to try out all sorts of different types of engagement work, so we said yes. So we gave them some money. And we created some great artworks, and from the researchers' perspective, they had a great experience. They had never worked with an artist before, so learned a huge amount. The rest of the department got involved. They learned how to go on the radio for the first time, so it was a huge learning curve. But we did kind of think, maybe there are better ways of bringing artists into our environment than my mate's got. My mate's here. So we ended up, we then had a couple of projects that were, again, running in parallel. And this one was working with Fringe Arts Bath, which Melissa already mentioned. It's a volunteer organisation in Bath. And this was just, again, a pilot project where we had short videos that researchers already made. They're all on YouTube. Fringe Arts Bath put a call out and said, are there any people who are interested in responding to these short films? So short 5-minute talks. And the artists then produced short films. And the films were really diverse, and some of them were absolutely amazing. Some of them weren't. And some of the artists went and spoke to the researchers. And the intention was not that it would be a huge time commitment, but some of them went and spoke to the researchers. And then some of the researchers kind of, again, I'm going to say don't send this out, but seem to take it as oh great, I've got some free labour. Well, actually, what I really want from you is, can you do this really, really precise piece of animation for me that actually, and it's got to be exactly scientifically correct. And some people just produce these amazing things. So there was something there, I think, in terms of learning about actually, what is the kind of creative outputs, and how do we work to foster equitable relationships. And we don't have that kind of exploitation that was going on, where you've got someone working essentially for free and someone who's paid by the university or by the research grant, and there's a huge disparity there. Who's doing all the work? Oh, no. So we wanted to, so that's something that we've always sort of taken into consideration. At the same time, we tried this one. This was a one-off event to look at ageing, and we worked with Unfinished Business and also with Edge Arts, as it now is, which Liam mentioned, which is the kind of arts bit of the University of Bath. So I should say I'm not the arts bit of the University of Bath. There's another bit of the university that deals with that, but we do work together. And this one was, you can see, people brought ingredients. They created this amazing kind of immersive experience. We were in the Scout Hut in Bath, if you know the Scout Hut in Bath. We decided what we were going to eat, we made up a menu, and we then cooked and ate together. And it was kind of hosted and curated throughout things to make sure that the conversation kind of stayed on message, and it was all about ageing. And it worked really, really well, it was really nice, but there was no next step for that. So people left going, I've just had an amazing conversation, but what next? And also, that was a £3,000 project, most of which went to Unfinished Business, which is fair enough. But then how do we do it again? You need another £3,000 if you're going to do it again. So that was a bit challenging, shall we say. Another project that we ran, again, you'll notice here 44AD popping up again. So this time we're beginning to build up quite a good relationship with them. And this was a project that was, again, came to us from an academic, and the 44AD have got an associate artist scheme, so they put the call out to their artists and said, do you want to get involved? And this was a bit more of a kind of artist responding to the work in a department, and there was an amazing live event, and it was all lots of fun, and anyway, that's a quick one-off. Then we had another project for our 50th anniversary. So my learning point for this is, if there's money floating around because there's an anniversary or a celebration, go for it. So we had this thing where we wanted to try, we'd had a kind of a whisper in our ear that we needed to work with more high priority and kind of more strategic academics. So with a bit of money we could go to the more important academics and go, do you want to be involved in this really prestigious 50th centenary project? And look, we've got some money to do it. So we worked with people. there were some weaknesses with that project, but they're nothing to do with the kind of art research collaboration, but I'm not going to go into those now. But I guess just the learning is tap into those opportunities that are there. But what's interesting now is that we are now, so last year, this is 2 projects, they're both, and these are small projects, these are £500 projects. This is someone who draws life-size whales, small children, planted bulbs, so now a life-size whale grows every year in their school. And this was a project around with a puppeteer, looking at seagulls and thinking about seagulls as migrants and kind of why they're having to migrate out of their normal environments, having conversations about immigration. And then this one happened only this year, again, just a few £100 anyway. And I guess what I wanted to highlight really is that we learn from each step. And what we've got here is a project which was a physicist, and she's a practical physicist. She has to make her kit to do her experiments. So she's interested in working with other makers. And at first, the proposal to us was kind of, I want to talk to people about this stuff. And we said, how about you learn together? So they did the skills swap shop, and there was all sorts of makers came onto campus and they looked at 3D printers and they looked at how to make glass fibres and they learned how to do loads of things. And so I think what we've done is we're now at a point where we understand in a much better way than we used to about art research collaborations, and therefore when people come and ask us for money, we can steer them in a much more productive way so that we have a bit more equity and actually the relationships are more productive and more effective, and we're at that point now. So even for very small funded projects now, I think we're at a much better place than we were 5 years ago. So that's it. All right. Thank you. Yeah.